Tracy. I have been a long-time follower of Grow Remote, so I know we've tried to connect lots of times, so I'm very happy to finally be able to help you guys out. So I'm actually just going to try sharing my screen, and hopefully it'll work. Can you see my presentation? Anyone?
Sorry, yes, we can.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, great. Okay, so as Tracy said, I'm Siobhán and I work at HubSpot. Remote working is something I'm really passionate about and I love talking about it, so apologies in advance for any tangents that I'm about to take you on this evening. So I'll start a little bit about me and my journey to remote working. And then I'll jump into how HubSpot supports remote working with some tips on finding remote jobs and then interviewing for those remote jobs too. And I'll leave plenty of time at the end to jump into other questions. So I do a lot of talks at HubSpot about the benefits of remote working and tips and tricks for remote working. So please ask me anything, although I'm not sure that I'm a poster girl, but I'll do my best. So first of all, just a little bit about me. I've been working at HubSpot for almost 5.5 years now. Time flies when you're having fun. And 2.5 of those years have been remote. I work on our international marketing team, where I lead a cross-functional team of marketers whose goal it is to ensure that areas of our business that our regional teams don't own are set up for success. So what that means in real life is, we have teams, non-English teams in France, in our DACH region, in Japan, Latin America, APAC, and so on. But most of those marketers look after top of the funnel activities. So things like our brand awareness, our PR, lead gen activities. They don't own things like the website or customer marketing strategy or product marketing strategy. They all sit within the central teams. So really, in essence, my team kind of fills a gap. So they're kind of like the go-between between the central strategy teams and the regional teams, and they make sure that those central strategies are created with a global mindset and with international consideration, cultural nuances, regional needs in mind. And my team is spread out between Boston, Dublin. I have one guy in Florida at the moment, and my manager, who's the VP of International Marketing, is based remotely out of Stockholm. My key stakeholders are the director of EMEA, who's based remotely from Dortmund in Germany, our director of LATAM, who is in Bogota, and then our director of Japan, who's based in Tokyo. So really, I have a very distributed web of stakeholders, and we are never ever in a meeting room all together. So it works, and we've made it work, and we've learned a lot of things along the way. So at this point, I have a confession to make. I've never actually found a remote role myself. So I hope I can help, but as a hiring manager and someone who has been at a remote friendly company for a good number of years, I think I will be able to provide some good tips. So jumping into my own journey, I actually started in the Dublin office back in 2014. I'm from Mackle Island originally, and that's in County Mayo, in case anyone doesn't know that. Very nice place. And my husband is from Galway, and our goal was always to move back west. I was really, really honest with my manager from day one that our goal was to move back west in the following 3 years or so. And I know that not every company is as open and supportive as HubSpot is even today, and that was back in 2014. So I know I was incredibly lucky to have my manager's support at the time. He said, sure, let's discuss it when the time comes. So then I actually had a different manager when the time became right for us to move, and that was 2017. And in addition to that, remote and flexible working were becoming more and more normalized at HubSpot. Interestingly, my manager back then moved to work remote in Dortmund in Germany at the same time as me, so we were really navigating the change together. Now it's not like I woke up one day and I just started working remotely. It's a huge lifestyle change, and I always say that's something that cannot be underemphasized. It takes such an adjustment, and you really need to adapt your lifestyle to suit remote working. So long before HubSpot was as remote oriented as it is today, flexible working was just so ingrained into our culture coming from our co-founders, which meant that I could work remote from home a couple of days a week if I wanted to. So I really used this benefit, and I started working from home 1 day per week, and then 2, then 3 before doing the full move remote in October 2017, and I haven't looked back since. So my journey remote has been pretty straightforward, don't get me wrong, but there have been some ups and downs. But in general, I feel like it has had a hugely positive impact on my life. It's interesting though, since COVID-19 all kicked off, I've seen colleagues, friends, family become really uncomfortable with having to work from home and not having a choice in the matter. And it's just been such a humbling reminder of how challenging it was in the beginning and what an adjustment it can be and how it's not for everyone. And then on the flip side to that as well, like, you know, a lot of my friends and family would have been like, she's working from home, and kind of really not taking it seriously, the fact that I had a really important job at a really, really amazing company, and they just like spent a lot of time teasing me. So just like they can see now that it's actually really hard, and it takes a certain amount of dedication and focus and motivation to be able to work from home, be successfully, and stay motivated all the time. So in terms of highs and lows, you know, there was an adjustment period, obviously. I was, you know, it was kind of hard for me to switch off at first. I was working from my kitchen table. I didn't have a dedicated office, which was a huge mistake. But I eventually got, you know, I kitted out my spare room, and I had my dedicated space. So that really allowed me to shut the door on my work in the evening. I went through a phase of feeling like that my boss was going to think that I was lazy and doing nothing. And, you know, it got to a stage where I was telling my boss when I was getting up to make coffee, where when I was going to the gym, or when I was going to get my nails done, or when I was, you know, just taking my lunch. And eventually she was like, Siobhán, I don't care. I trust that you're doing a good job. Just like do your job and do it at a time that suits you. So, you know, that was so supportive, but it was definitely like a really hard shift for my mind to make when I moved remote first. Social distance is probably a bad choice of words here, but you know, when I was in the office, I was a real social being. I would go to all our nights out, and you know, we would have trivia nights and charity events, and you know, all sorts of like different panels and talks, and I just really miss being part of those. But thankfully over the years, HubSpot has done a really good job of being really inclusive of the remote community. If they're organizing something in the office, they just assume from the outset that it can be done virtually, and they'll figure out a way of being inclusive. So over the last few weeks, I have attended bingo online, I have attended trivia online, all run by HubSpot, and it's just been absolutely incredible. And I don't feel like I'm missing out on that social aspect that I did when I moved remote first. And then finally, you know, I had fear of lack of visibility. So I am really ambitious. I really want to push my career forward. I want to do the best job I could. And, you know, at 27, moving to the middle of nowhere in Galway, I was like, am I really going to help my career here? Am I going to hinder it in any way? And as a result of that fear, I think it really pushed me to work that little bit harder, and not work harder because I was working hard, but I mean work harder in terms of getting your work visible and understood and show the value that you're bringing to the company. And it certainly hasn't held back my career in any way, shape or form. It's, you know, going from strength to strength, and I have a lot to thank HubSpot for in terms of being so supportive in that environment. And then in the highs, you know, I just adore the flexibility I have. I have a far more balanced life, and because I have a more balanced life, I'm much happier. I'm definitely more productive, and as a result of being more productive, I'm better at my job, and that has helped me grow my career. I always say as well that, you know, I think that remote working specifically suits the role that I'm in. I am an international marketer. There are some times that I'm working on projects that are specifically dedicated to regions like Japan. And because I have that flexible element to my job, it means that I can get up at 6 a.m. if I want and work with the Japanese team for a few hours and then finish up a little bit earlier in the afternoon. And that again just adds, you know, more balance to my life. I can spend the afternoon doing my groceries or cleaning my house or whatever there is to do. So it's just, you know, HubSpot always tries to build the job around you rather than you having to build your life around work, and they really have enabled me to do that. So then HubSpot as a remote employer, I don't know if anyone has ever heard of the pyjama principle. this was a principle that was spoken about at Inbound last year by Darmesh, and it really got a lot of interaction on social media, I guess, and a lot of people kind of picked up on it. And it's the idea that success is proportional to the degree to which you let people stay in their pajamas. And honestly, I spend a lot of time in my pajamas. I'm most comfortable in my pajamas, and I do my best work in my pajamas. So I don't apologize for ever wearing my pajamas to work. But I think that having a co-founder come out and say something like this speaks buckets about the fact that remote work is fully supported by our leadership team. The culture that our co-founders have built at HubSpot is one where they value results over the number of hours you work, where you work in the world, and therefore we've always been able to be really encouraging of our remote workers. So to tell this part of the story, I'm going to bring you through a few interesting numbers. I think they're interesting, and then I'll stop talking about HubSpot and go on to the tips, because that's what you guys are here for. So back in 2007, we hired our first remote employee at HubSpot. Our longest standing remote employee has been with us for 12 years. And we have over 300 fully remote employees at HubSpot, and they work across 7 different countries. Now, when I say fully remote people, I mean like their work address is their home address. This is not the number of people who avail of our flexible working environment in terms of working from home for a couple of days a week. These are 100% fully remote. They do not have a desk in the office. Last year, our remote population grew by 86%. And then if we think about our remote population in terms of its own office, it's the 3rd largest office at HubSpot, representing about 10% of our overall population. And what's really nice is that, at HubSpot, we have nicknames for each of our offices. So the Dublin office is Dubspot, and then the Berlin office is Burspot. Sydney, we have Sidspot. We actually call our remote population Remote Spot. So it's really, really inclusive and nice, because it feels like we're part of something. We're just not like ships sailing in a sky, or sailing in the sea, and that we actually belong to something. And then we have over 50% of our remote population was hired as a remote employee versus starting in the office and then going remote like I did, which I think is it's a huge number, because we're really selling HubSpot as a company that is really friendly and enabling to people who want to work remotely. And this leads me on to the most relevant stat for this webinar, and that is that the word remote is the 2nd most searched term behind the word intern on our HubSpot's job site. And really that speaks buckets about the number of people who want to work at HubSpot, and also the number of people who are interested in remote work and internships, I suppose. So I am going to move on to the tips and tricks that I have for finding remote positions and interviewing for remote positions, and this really comes from my experience as a hiring manager. Hopefully you'll find it helpful. I think I have about 8 tips for finding remote positions, and then 9 for interviews. So I'll get stuck in. So number 1 is work on your CV. This is really, really important. I think there was a Grow Remote webinar last week, which was really focused on tailoring your CV. So I'm not going to labor this point too much, but it's really, really important to tailor your CV to the specific role that you're applying for, including things like keywords. So if you're applying for a role that is, on the website strategy team, it might be a good idea to include the word web or website somewhere on your CV, and then highlight any transferable skills that you have that you think might be useful to position yourself as a remote employee. So those are skills like time and task management, self-motivation, focus, and comfort with technology, proactive communication skills. Those are skills that are all really, really important as a remote worker. So just remember that those are skills that your hiring manager will be looking for, as well as your skills to actually do the job that you're applying for. The second one then is just to make sure that it is actually a remote job that you're looking for. And, it is a huge jump if you've never worked remotely before. Like, I know some people just don't have any other option, but if you do have an option, there are other options such as, flexible working or partially remote that might broaden your job search that little bit more. And, you might be looking for roles that have work from home capabilities, for example. And just consider, like, do you get energy from people in the office? Are you okay with being by yourself? Do you need that human interaction? And what is actually pushing you to apply for a remote role? And just having a little bit of a transition from being an in-office employee to being a remote employee is sometimes nice. So those more flexible jobs, or jobs that offer partially remote options, can be a nice buffer between, really dedicating yourself to working full-time remote. Number 3 then is, if you find that dream job and it's keeping you up at night and it's just making your belly full of lovely butterflies, but it's not listed as remote and you're dead set on finding a remote role, it's no harm to ask. Reach out to the hiring manager or someone at the company that you might know, and ask them if there's a possibility that the role could be remote, and especially if it's a company that supports, enables, and hires remote workers, such as HubSpot or your Spotify or your Zapier, all those types of companies. Not every single job that we hire for says remote, but an awful lot of them could be remote, especially in marketing. And I always say, when I'm looking for new candidates, I prefer to get the right person rather than the right person in the right place. So that's just a good one to keep in your back pocket. The fourth one then is to use specific websites that advertise remote roles. Grow Remote should be your first port of call, obviously, but there are lots of other ones out there as well if you want to broaden your pool. Remoters.net is another great one, European based, run by a friend of mine. So just, Google it, you'll find lots of different job boards that are dedicated to those remote roles. A lot of people also say that, you should avoid using the more traditional sites like LinkedIn and Glassdoor in your search for remote jobs. I don't necessarily agree with that, to be honest. When you look at the bigger tech companies like your HubSpots, your LinkedIn, your Facebooks, if that's the kind of role that you're looking for, then they're always going to advertise on LinkedIn, Glassdoor, and Indeed. But I think you just need to adjust your search strategy. So using keywords like remote, virtual, completely distributed, 100% distributed, flexible working, all those types of terms should be used in your search. Remove your location parameters. So don't look for remote jobs Dublin, because that kind of defeats the purpose of what you're searching for. So just take location out and sign up for job alerts, because they can be a real time saver. The other thing that you can do as well, that Trina just informed me earlier, Trina is my hiring partner at HubSpot, who's also on the webinar. Hi, Trina. She said that you can actually tag yourself as looking for opportunities within LinkedIn, and say that you're open to remote roles. So that might be a really, really good option. There's some really nice active Facebook groups as well, and I guess this tip and the next tip are kind of linked when it comes to networking, like who you know and where you know them is really important. So take a look at some of these active Facebook groups. They're European based, but if you do a bit of a Google, you'll find worldwide ones as well. They have become a lot more active over the last few weeks and months, but they can be a really, really good place to find advertised roles and people within companies that support remote hiring as well. And then some Slack communities as well. And I'm not just saying ones that are dedicated to remote working, because those are wonderful, but I was looking for someone in product marketing very recently, and I'm part of a Slack group called Product Marketing Alliance, and they have a job board specifically within that Slack community. I posted the job in there, and I got some really, really good quality CVs from that post, and as well as that, I just got to know know some really, really interesting people from my post that I had some really, really great Zoom chats with, and they weren't even interested in the role. They were just interested in what I was doing. So yeah, the other thing on the networking element is that, a lot of companies run referral schemes. So it kind of pays to get to know people working within companies, and they might be able to support you when applying for roles, or going through the interview process. Sorry, I see a lot of flashing coming up here on my Zoom. Are we all okay? Lots of chat.
All good.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I was getting a bit distracted there. So the networking element is really, really important. Also keep an eye out for in-person events that are run by companies who support remote working as well. Those are always really, really good places to go to find more about those types of roles. So hopefully that was helpful. I think my final point here is, just to have faith. We're living through a time where remote working is becoming more and more normal. And I think it's just, smart people at this time will really use this time to practice remote working, figure out how to optimize it for their company if they're lucky enough to have a job, and be able to bring back learnings to the companies they're already in as to how to establish, optimize, and really support the remote working movement going forward. So I really think the way we work has changed forever, and it's up to everyone who's working remote now to really push that movement forward. So just have faith. I think that we're all going to have far more opportunities and options when it comes to flexible working going forward than we have maybe in the previous 12 months. So then when we talk about the actual interview, I think I have 9 points here. So the first of all, you want to treat it like any other interview and prep appropriately. I find sometimes when I go into Zoom webinars, I find that people are they're a lot more casual than they would be if they were sitting across from you. And I don't know why, because at the end of the day, it is an interview. You're there to sell your skills, and it's just important to remain poised, remain professional, and remain like that you have a demeanor that is one that projects your passion, your motivation, your focus, and all the things that go along with preparing for an interview appropriately. So make sure that you have all the questions you want to ask at the end prepared, and all of the things that really you would do as part of a traditional interview. Bring your best self, and unfortunately the pyjama principle does not apply here, and you do need to dress up. I always say to candidates, if you're unsure about what you should wear to an interview, always err on the side of formality. But yeah, make sure you dress up, that you look well, remember your demeanor is what the person on the other side of Zoom or whatever technology you're using is going to see, and yeah, just make sure that you're calm, and you have given yourself every single opportunity to know what the job is about, that you know your CV backwards, and you can talk about yourself in the best way possible. Familiarize yourself with the tech a couple of days beforehand. So, a lot of recruiting managers will send you on a test link if you're using Zoom, for example, beforehand. Even myself and Tracy jumped on a Zoom before this webinar just to make sure everything was working. And honestly, it can save you so much time, headaches, heartache, and stress going into an interview, because interviews are stressful enough as they are. So just make sure that you have your audio working, your visual. If you're using video, your internet can take the video as well. You may need to ask all your family to get off the internet while you're doing your interview in order to make sure that you don't have any dips in your internet, depending on what part of the country that you live in. Also decide whether or not you're going to use a headset. I use a headset all the time for work because I like to banish out other noises, and it's totally fine to wear headsets usually in interviews. And if you're unsure, just ask the recruiter and they'll be able to advise you. But you know, you're not going to not get a job because you're wearing a headset, and it's just a very common question that I get. Consider your surroundings. So you know, you don't want to be sitting in a room that is full of mess. You don't want a cat to be walking across your screen mid interview or anything like that. As you can see, I have a very neutral background. I'm just after moving into a new house. So I will decorate the wall, have a little bit of fur on the back of my desk chair just to add a little bit of warmth and variety to my background. But you know, you don't want anything too crazy in the background. Obviously, you know, if you're applying for a job in the accounting industry, it might make sense to have a few certs up behind you, or some talking points that you might want to draw attention to. But other than that, like I would keep your background as plain as possible. Be on time. I cannot explain the amount of times I have turned up to an interview and I have had to wait a minute, 2 minutes, up to 10 minutes for someone to jump on Zoom. It's not cool. It just doesn't, it's not a good start. Generally, I know HubSpot interviews are 30 minutes long, and you know, if you're late by 5 minutes, it only gives 25 minutes for an interviewer to get to really know you, and you're not giving yourself the best opportunity to really sell yourself. Be really mindful of your body language. So make sure that you smile, you make eye contact, you know, use your hands if that's what you usually do to, you know, relay passion or, you know, your enthusiasm about something. And you also need to consider the interviewer's body language as well. You know, if the interviewer is trying to, you know, interrupt by asking you a follow-on question, or they're trying to get a word in edgeways, it's really important to be able to identify the interviewer's body language. And it can be really, really challenging. Probably one of the most challenging things about interviews over Zoom or over any technology. It's definitely one of the biggest kind of adjustments that I've had to make, because I get so much energy of being in a room with someone and getting to know them in real life. So that's just a really, really big thing to be mindful of. Don't be afraid to have some notes. So this is personal to me. I really don't mind if my candidates have notes, if they want to have some, you know, a list of questions that they want to ask me at the end of an interview, if they want to have a few points around skills or projects they've worked on that they really think would sell their fit as a candidate. You can also always, you know, put post-it notes up around your camera if you're just, you know, worried about always looking down at your notes. But I always say to candidates in an interview, you know, you can refer to your notes if you want, and you know, take notes if you want to as well. It's really no hassle. Like, it's not an exam at the end of the day. I really want to make my candidates feel comfortable and as comfortable as possible. And you know, the last thing you want to do in an interview is stress someone out by getting them to relate things from memory. So I think that having notes in an interview is absolutely fine. Make sure everything is on mute. Pings and dings while you're doing your thing really won't help you. So that means like turning off Slack. There's nothing worse than, you know, a WhatsApp notification coming in on your desktop during an interview, or you know, something coming in from LinkedIn. So make sure that everything is closed. It will be, you know, it'll provide minimal distraction, and it just means that you can focus completely on what you're doing. And it also, you know, if you keep getting pings while you're on an interview, the interviewer will be like, is this person not interested in what I'm saying? So just make sure that you give yourself the best possible chance there. Always remember that things do go wrong. I think, you know, with all the Tracy Keoghs in the room this evening, I think that this is the perfect example of it. But the thing is that everyone expects things to go wrong, especially when it's associated with technology. And when they do go wrong, just remember that it's the perfect time to show how you cope in moments of stress. So just embrace that. Just because the internet goes down during an interview does not mean that you've lost the job. It just means that you need to work around stuff, and you may be able to reschedule an interview and whatnot, depending on what the challenge is. So I think that is my final tip. Hopefully they were helpful. I do see that we're already at 34 minutes past 6, so that absolutely flew. I talk an awful lot of words, so hopefully you caught at least half of that, and it was helpful and what you expected.
It was so helpful, Siobhán. I am also in my pajamas bottoms. So we are everything that is yeah, so there you go. I laughed at that piece. Siobhán, that was really, really insightful, just in terms of even the percentage of the workforce in HubSpot that's remote, and the fact that you give them a name, and they have their own group within the wider group is really interesting. We have some questions in. The first one is a question that every remote company gets, which is, hi, do HubSpot have equal opportunities to progress for remote, like people in the office to progress?
Absolutely, and I think the fact that we have a couple of VPs who are remote now. So my own boss, who's VP of International Marketing, is remote in Stockholm. We have our Chief Customer Officer who's remote out of San Fran. And yeah, as I said in my presentation, I have grown from being a senior manager to a principal manager to now being a team manager in the space of 2 years, and 2 years of being remote. So I really think that it's not the volume of work, it's the quality of work that you do and the impact that you have on the business that drives your success and your growth at HubSpot, rather than where you are.
Yes.
And that's really, we have a remote inclusion manager at HubSpot, and that's like what she tries to really get into the brains of all our team managers, is that we should not see location as being something that holds people back.
I think that, as you mentioned that, sorry, I'm responding to a chat here too, tech support. As you mentioned that, I think that HubSpot might be the only organization to have someone dedicated to inclusion of remote. I think that says everything that I suppose you need to hear about whether you have equal access to opportunities.
Yeah, and just a little bit of background on that role. That role was created, I think, beginning of last year, and it's really, her goal is really to serve the growing population of remote employees, and to improve the remote experience, manage the rollout of the global philosophy around remote working, and that really includes high-level company-wide guidelines around team-based flexibility. Her name is Megan Williams. If you want to follow her or add her on LinkedIn, she posts some really, really interesting content around remote working. And she's just been phenomenal. She does things like, she's set up a Slack channel just for remote spotters. She organizes things like remote yoga. We had a remote mindfulness section a couple of weeks ago. If we are doing things like celebrating anniversaries, she will make sure that all the remote workforce get whatever treats that the people in the office get.
Oh, Siobhán, it's such a pet peeve of mine. You get an email saying, it's somebody's birthday, see you wherever for cake, and you're like, I can't see you there, because it's a hybrid team and you're not there.
We had an eco week or something a couple of months ago, and we all got eco straws and just washable sandwich bags, and I got one in the post, and I was like, this is the best day ever. And things are just improving like that all the time. We're spoiled, really.
Yeah, because I think probably hybrid is much harder than fully remote, because you do have that kind of blending of a couple of different worlds. Somebody just commented that was really nice and very helpful. Thank you, Siobhán.
You're welcome.
And then Elwood, who can't ask a question because she's on her iPad, I think, which is an interesting kink of Zoom, said, what type of skills are in demand for remote work? So maybe for a little bit of context, Siobhán, there's loads of training certifications happening around remote, and they're kind of treating remote itself as a skill. So I guess one is, do you treat remote itself as a skill? And then what kind of skills are in demand for remote roles?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I touched briefly on the whole CV and tailoring your CV, and when you're doing your CV for a remote specific role, you need to not only highlight the skills you have to do the job, but also your remote skills. And those would be around your time and task management. So, have you got experience working in like specific organization or project management software? Are you self-motivated and focused? And how can you actually, portray that in your CV or in that initial conversation that you'll have with your hiring manager? And comfort with technology. So just being able to say that, yeah, I'm a power user of Slack, or very competent user of Slack, and I'm very comfortable in a Zoom environment. And then just being able to be proactive in your communication skills. And you can display those skills by just the conversations you have with your recruiter as you go through a job process. In terms of specific certifications and trainings on remote working, I'm not familiar with them. But I would say that there are so many skills that each of us learn in real life, life outside of work, but also within our work that are transferable into remote working. And it's not so much about getting new skills to be a good remote worker, it's about figuring out how to bring the other skills that you have, those transferable skills, into the conversation. And what evidence have you got to show that you have those skills, more so than doing a certification in remote working, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think actually a lot of companies say that they don't look for the certification in remote work. And Boundless, a company we're hiring, say a bit like you said, they want somebody who has experience. But so if you're using Zoom, just test it out first and then come in. You can practice skills without getting a certification. But there is information on our website about all the certification programs if you want to have a look.
Okay, interesting.
Have all the information.
Yeah, but the other, sorry Tracy, just to add to that as well, like I think that now is a perfect time to upskill and to do more in education. I'm not saying that you need to sign up for a master's, but there are so many free online courses, and not even certifications. Like I know HubSpot have their own academy, and they're great, but there are so many other ones as well, short courses that you can do on things like communication. So I don't think you necessarily need to focus on remote communication, but just like general good communication skills. I think that's kind of more important.
Great. Do you think it's better to start working in an office first to gain experience and then switch to remotely, or is it okay to start remote right away? Again, a very common question.
Yeah, this is something that I've kind of gone back and forth on myself. So I think it comes down to your personality. I'm generally a very, very social person. I get a lot of energy from people. I have met the best of friends through HubSpot, and I don't think I would be as happy as a remote worker if I hadn't already built up the friendships and the collaboration I had with people in the office. Now, that's not to say that that's true for everyone. There are other people who I have hired myself who have, come into HubSpot and as a remote worker, and they have just hit the ground running, and they bring a different kind of perspective to things, because I have worked in the office. I know my stakeholders because I've been in the office with them. I kind of know who I get on really well with, and if they ask me for something, I will always prioritize them because I know them and they become friends of mine. But people who come into the office as a remote worker, they don't have any of those biases, and they can just be really, really effective from day one by being very not showing any, I don't want to say favoritism, but being really objective, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It levels the playing field, as come up on other webinars in that respect. I work remotely from home, and we have get-togethers in the office sometimes. Get-togethers in office, and sometimes team leads come down for a day to our location in the country. Does that happen in HubSpot?
Not within marketing, to the best of my knowledge. That's not to say that I'm not planning something like that myself for my team. I would love my team to come to Galway and see my office and where I work. I do believe that it has happened on other teams at HubSpot, such as like engineering and all that kind of thing. But it's certainly it's at the discretion of team leads. It's not something that's really ingrained into our culture or the way we support remote work.
And I think that's true for a lot of organizations. Just in the chat box, I am popping in a link to a Zoom room. So that's a little bit different to this webinar because we can all talk to one another as opposed to just me and Siobhán having the floor here. And just a way for us, I suppose, to get to know each other like you would have at an offline event, which is what we're used to doing. But I'll just take one. So if you can copy and paste that link so that you're ready to post it in when we hop out of this one, that'd be great. And in the meantime, I'll just take a couple more questions. So are there any digital marketing specific portals? I have more than 10 years experience and have been applying to remote jobs since quite a few weeks, months. Yes, it can be very frustrating when you're applying for so long. So any suggestions in terms of approach or best to companies to apply to? Is HubSpot hiring for digital marketing roles currently?
Yeah, so first of all, we are always hiring. Second of all, I would ask yourself, at what stage are you falling out of the process? Are you getting any calls from recruiters? Are you getting yourself into the interview process at all? So if you're not getting any calls from recruiters, or you're not even getting that first conversation, I would take a good hard look at your CV. Maybe get some advice on your CV from a CV professional. I think your guest a couple of weeks ago suggested someone who might be good for that. And then if you are not succeeding within the interviews themselves, then you can always ask for feedback from the hiring managers, and you're allowed to do that. So I would definitely be looking for that feedback, and not just getting the feedback but also taking action on it. Yeah. It's hard for me to understand why you're not getting roles when I haven't interviewed you myself, if that makes sense.
So I might put on just a 2 or 3 minute warning for moving to the next room. So please do copy and paste that link in the chat there. But in the meantime, and this is another common question, does HubSpot offer entry level remote work in Ireland in terms of customer success, tech support, or operations?
I'm actually not sure about customer success. There may be some in support, but I definitely have to check and get back to you. If I'm happy to share my email after this if you want to link in with me, or just add me on LinkedIn and ask me the question. I'll find the answer.
Yeah, and also I suppose keep an eye on their careers website. It's very, very clear, and so that's probably a good place to be. You kind of touched on this briefly, but how do you cope with isolation when working remotely? How do you build meaningful relationships at work when working remotely, when you're not in the office first?
Yeah, it's one thing that I really struggled with at first, because I was like, who do I talk to, and where are my humans? And my husband would come home from work and I'd literally be like a dog running down the stairs and be like, talk to me. But no, I've become much better at figuring out how to have those water cooler chats. So if I have 15 minutes between a meeting, I'll just jump on a Zoom with one of my co-workers, and they're like, brilliant. I'll obviously check their calendar to see if they're free, and if they are, I'll just say, do you want to chat for coffee? Or I'd actually schedule coffees on Friday as well. So I have my calendar blocked off every Friday. It's a no meeting Friday for me, but that just gives me the opportunity then just to fill it up with, not fill it up, I do work on a Friday, but I have more coffee chats on a Friday, and that human connection is just so important. And there is actually a lot of research to say that social relationships built over video and socially are just as powerful as in-person ones. So I think it can just be a little bit weird at first to try to build a relationship with someone over Zoom when you've never met them in real life, but it's certainly possible. So just being open and able to jump on Zoom calls, have a Slack conversation, celebrating birthdays. I always ask people that I work closely with if I can sign birthday cards coming up to birthdays and weddings and all that kind of stuff, if they're doing something for the team. And it's just helped me bring a more personal approach to my relationship building.
I wonder, does workplace birthdays, does Zoom stop the whole everybody awkwardly singing happy birthday? That would be great. I just always find that so difficult. I know. That'd be great if we put a stop to that. Okay, and just a final warning to copy and paste that if you want to come over. But and we'll just take one more. Just people are asking about, so if they want a digital thinking of doing a digital project manager course, I would say, would this aid me getting a role in HubSpot? But just briefly, Siobhán, you mentioned something about the HubSpot Academy. Is that something that anybody can study?
Yeah, anyone can jump into the HubSpot Academy, sign up to do the certifications, and they are free. They're pretty hard. Like, it's not just like you sit in front of a video and you've got a certification. You actually have to do work to get the certification. In terms of specific certs, I mean, if you are applying for a project management position, I think the expectation is that you would have some kind of project management certification. If you already have a certification, like, I don't think you need to do another certification. It's then more important to show that you have experience and success in running projects digitally. That was really hard to say.
Siobhán, just once again, thank you for your time, on your own time in the evening, helping other people live your life, as I'm saying now. You might find your image just posted all over Grow Remote's materials. But thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. Really practical and insightful advice, so we really appreciate it. And I'm going to hop over into the other room now. So we'll see you.
I'm going to jump over as well. So see you there.
Super.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Really appreciate it.
Bye bye.